Good morning and welcome to either the last edition or next to the last edition of Commerce and Labor City for 81st session. Madam Secretary, call the roll, please.
Senator Hardy? Here. Senator Lang? Here. Senator Neal? Here. Senator Pickard? Here. Senator Scheibel? Here. Senator Settlemeyer? Chair Spearman?
Here. And Senator Settlemeyer comes back in, just mark him present when he gets here. Okay. So we have one bill to discuss today, and that is Senate Assembly Bill 280 that was heard on yesterday, and I will turn it over to Mr. Melgarejo.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Cesar Melgarejo, Committee Policy Analyst. For the record, Assembly Bill 280 is sponsored by Assemblywoman Peters et al. And was heard yesterday. Assembly Bill 280 requires that any single-stall restroom located in a place of public accommodation be as inclusive and accessible as possible to a person of any gender, identity, or expression. There is an amendment attached to this work session document this morning that was submitted by Assemblywoman Peters, which is to amend subsection 3C of Section 1 to revise the definition of single-stall restroom and similarly revise the definition of single-stall restroom throughout the bill. Madam Chair, there is an additional amendment that's not included in this work session document, and I believe legal counsel will be walking us through that amendment.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Keene. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair Spearman. For the record, Will Keene, Committee Counsel. It's my understanding that there's two additional amendments. One would be a grandfather clause of type, which would remove all the requirements for any current buildings. It would still keep the requirement that the local governments, that's in Section 9 and related sections, would have to update their building codes. And then these new requirements would only apply to bathrooms built in the future in accordance with these revised building codes. So the actual effect of this would get pushed out pretty far as the public seeing restrooms be concerned. It would act fairly soon with regard to the building codes. In addition, it's my understanding there was a request to add a provision to each one of these new sections saying that it does not create a private right of action. And as far as I understand, those are the two additional amendments.
Thank you. Committee members, additional questions or comments? Senator Pickard?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and I really do appreciate everyone's effort on trying to make this bill work. The thing I still struggle with is there's a reason that we have the building codes require one for each gender, or maybe I should say just for to deal with the realities. Over many decades, we've developed building codes that address both health and safety as well as comfort. And the reason we required a men's room and a women's restroom was because, frankly, women have more sensitive sensibilities as a whole for being close to the realities on the ground because of the way that the restrooms are used. And so ultimately, by doing this, we're going to be making all the restrooms men's rooms, and that will create problems for a good number of women in society. While currently businesses are allowed to do this voluntarily if they wish, I don't believe this should be a mandate. So I'll be voting no, but I appreciate all the efforts on the bill. Thank you.
Thank you. So maybe I missed something because I didn't know it made all the restrooms men's restrooms.
Well, from a practical standpoint, because what it'll do is it removes the designation from a women's restroom where they don't have the same things occurring. They don't have urine dropping right in front of the toilet.
Oh yeah, let me hold on a minute because Senator Peters, can you come up? Does this mean that every restroom in the business has to be non-gender specific?
Madam Chair, Sarah Peters for the record, only single stall restrooms would be non-gender specific.
So we'll still have, if they're not single stall, you still have men and women. Okay, I'm just trying to understand it. Okay, thank you.
Sure, Madam Chair, and I appreciate that. It's, let me be a little clear. We graduate in the number of stalls required based on the occupant load. And so with a low occupant load, and I forget what the threshold is, but if that's 10 people that are going to be in the space, then you have to go to 2 restrooms, 1 of each. If you get past the next threshold, now you have to have multiple stalls in each. And then when you get to the next threshold, now you have to have the unisex or family restroom. And that's all built into the code so that as the use increases, you spread that out over multiple fixtures. But being that we're confined simply to, this bill is addressing only single stall restrooms. When you get to the point where you're required to have 2 single stall restrooms, for all practical purposes, because men are going to be using both now, they become men's rooms, and so you're going to have a fair amount of discomfort from those women who simply won't use a room that men have used. So because I'm trying to be sensitive to all of those people and cognizant of the history of the development of the building codes, I just can't quite get there. But thank you, I appreciate that.
So it sounds to me like men are the problem, and maybe they could work on that. But in the meantime, I think the bill is fine just the way that it was, and I understand the reason for the amendments, and so I will move to amend and do pass with all 3 amendments as suggested in today's work session.
Madam Chair,
Yes,
we have a work session document. I would love to see which amendments are included and which aren't, and which are put in. I don't have anything before me that shows that.
I can clarify my motion, Chair Spearman. I would like to move to amend the bill with the amendment listed on the work session document, revising the definition of single stall restroom, as well as the amendment mentioned by Mr. Keene to grandfather in or grandparent in existing buildings that have a men's and women's room that would not fall into, grandfather or grandparent in facilities that have a men's room and a women's room and would be left with 1 single gender bathroom and 1 unisex bathroom, or 1 all gender bathroom if they were to follow the letter of the bill strictly, as well as the amendment proposed to add a clause indicating that this does not create a private right of action. So those are the 3 amendments that I'm proposing, not because I think we need them, but because I understand that they will hopefully help some of my colleagues get to a place where they can also support this very sensible bill.
I'll second the motion.
we have a motion. We have a second. Additional discussion?
Yeah, lots of discussion,
Yeah.
if you may
And-
allow.
And Senator Hardy? So, hold on, I just need to let everybody know that this room is going to be used by some other folks, so I'm just trying to move us along.
I
but
do
yeah, go
not
on.
want to move this along without just knowledge of what's in it and what's not in it. So I would love to have legal tell me what is in the amendment as opposed to the description of what's in it, because I still don't understand what it is. And I to the point of Senator Pickard's point, there is a distinct anatomical reason that the men's bathrooms are messy and the floor is dirty, and that is because of the membranous urethra that it never contracts fully, and so the concept of fully emptying doesn't happen, and it gets worse as the man gets older. And that's as sensitive as I can say it, and that's why you're going to see the men's restrooms are, quote, not as cleaned floor as the women's restrooms. And that is perhaps why Senator Pickard's point about the men's, if the men's room becomes a women's room and vice versa, then the men will be using either one, and so both restrooms will become more soiled, I'll call it, on the floor. And so I would dearly love to see what those amendments are that we're talking about, and perhaps easy enough to say which one on our work session I can cross out, because I'm not sure of that. Thank you.
And just be clear, no problem with you stating what your concerns were. I just want to let everybody know that come 11 o'clock, I don't know if somebody else will be in this room. So, Mr. King, can you clarify for us, please?
Yes. Thank you, Chair Spearman. For the record, Will Keene, Committee Counsel. The three amendments, as I understand them, the first is the one that is attached to the work session document presented by Assemblywoman Peters, and it's to amend every definition of single stall restroom as indicated in on the work session document, so that the restrooms that have a toilet and a urinal can only be considered single stall restrooms if they are not separated by a stall, which, as I understand it, would mean if there's some kind of separation, so that if the toilet and the urinal are separated by some kind of barrier, then it's not considered a single stall bathroom or restroom. That's the First Amendment. My understanding of the Second Amendment is that we are going to take out all of the requirements with regard to bathrooms being changed to be all access, and only require them for the building codes. The building codes need to be updated, and then the requirements would only apply to buildings built in accordance with those building requirements in the future. The last amendment that I understand is that we are going to add to each new section that's left, there won't be that many, a subsection specifically providing that there will not be any private right of action connected to a violation of the section. Those are the three amendments as I understand them.
Madam Chair. So with the work session document before us and before you, which ones of the bullet points are not going to be there? It will be that I understand that the third bullet point will disappear. Is that correct?
With your permission, Chair Spearman, the third bullet point will be different. The third bullet point, there will not be any civil action anymore, and but the provision for enforcement, the local government enforcement and the state government enforcement would be applicable in the future after buildings are built in accordance with the new building codes.
I'm a little confused. Well, the third bullet point says provides that any person who derives, interferes with, or punishes another person for accessing single stall restroom is guilty of a misdemeanor, is liable to the person whose access is affected for actual damages that are recoverable by a civil action. Does that disappear?
With your permission, Chair Spearman, Will Keene, Committee Counsel, for the record. My understanding of the amendments is that essentially the requirement for all access bathrooms will not be applicable to any existing building as of the effective date of the Act, which is October 1st of 2021. The requirement will be put on local governments to update building codes, and buildings that are built in accordance with those building codes in the future will have to follow the requirements of having the all access bathroom as described in the bill. And in any case, we are getting rid of any private right of action. However, the government enforcement action will still be present for the buildings in the future that are built in accordance with the building codes. That's my understanding.
So if I could summarize it, if you have a single stall bathroom that has a lock on it, then the person can go into that single stall bathroom that is labeled as restroom, not necessarily any particular sex or orientation, and they will be able to use that restroom. If somebody says you can't use that restroom, even though it is labeled as restroom, then that person who precludes them from going and using the appropriately labeled restroom that is good for everybody will be liable with a misdemeanor. Is that what you're saying? In the future and currently?
With your permission, Chair Spearman, for the record, Will Keene, Committee Counsel, currently, no. This would only, my understanding of the amendment is that this requirement to have all access bathrooms will never be applicable to any existing building. It will only be applicable to buildings that are built in the future in accordance with the revised building codes. And then at that point, after we have a building that's built in accordance with the revised building code, then if someone deprives or interferes with someone using one of the all-access bathrooms, then there would be the misdemeanor requirement, and there will never be a private right of action.
So in the future, there will be a misdemeanor potential that a person can be charged with if they preclude somebody from using the restroom that is designed to be a single stall restroom. If they preclude somebody from using that single stall restroom according to the code that is going to be rewritten, the building code?
Well, of course, the committee can amend the bill. I'm sorry, with your permission, Chair Spearman, for the record, Will Keene, Committee
Yeah,
Counsel.
go on, just go on direct, okay? Yeah, you don't need my permission, just go on direct.
Thank you. So my understanding is, and certainly the committee can do this differently if the committee would like to, is that the building codes will be updated, and then buildings will be built in accordance with those new building codes. The buildings that are built in accordance with the new building codes will have to have, well, their single stall bathrooms will have to comply with these requirements. And so, at least as I understand it now, the committee does not have to do this. There will not be any private right of action, but there still will be the governmental enforcement. So yes, as I understand the amendment currently, there would still be a possible misdemeanor for someone who interferes with the use of an all-access bathroom, which is part of a building that is built in the future in accordance with the building codes, which are going to be revised in accordance with this bill as of October 1st of 2021. I'm sorry that's actually very complicated. As I say it, I understand it's complicated. I'm happy to clarify in any way possible.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Will.
So we have a motion and a second on the floor. Any additional questions? Okay, dope. Madam Secretary, please call the roll for the vote.
Senator Hardy?
No.
Senator Lang? Yes. Senator Neal?
Yes.
Senator Pickard?
No.
Senator Scheibel?
Yes.
Chair Spearman?
Let the record show that the motion does carry. And Senator Scheibel, if you want to take the floor statement? Okay, thank you. Okay, so now let's go to the last order of business, which is public comment. Broadcast, do we have anyone on the phones?
Thank you, Chair. Good morning. If you would like to testify in public comment or to speak in public comment, please press *9 now to take your place in the queue. Again, if you would like to speak in public comment this morning, please press *9 now. Chair, your public line is open and working, and you have no one wishing to speak at this time.
Okay, thank you, thank you. Committee members, additional comments? Okey-doke. I don't know if we'll be back, but if we're not, thank you everyone for all that you've done. Broadcast, you all have been fabulous, absolutely fabulous. So with that, we are now adjourned.